and decisive resolution taken to direct the Constitutional Review Committee to review Section 25 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And this review gives effect to the ANC 54th National Conference resolution and our people's aspirations to accelerate land redistribution and land restitution. The review must explicitly include the expropriation of land without compensation, with due regard to future investment in the economy, agricultural production, and security. And this will be one of the legal mechanisms and instruments available to government in fulfillment of the Freedom Charter injunction that the people shall share in the country's wealth and that the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. This landmark resolution begins a process we trust will be supported by South Africans, including those who voted against, to use our Constitution and the laws of our land to reverse the centuries of legacy of land dispossession and colonial oppression. And the ANC reaffirms our resolution that the accelerated land reform program must be executed in an orderly manner and continue to call for strong action against those who occupy land unlawfully. And this program of land reform must further have clear targets and timeframes, be guided by sound legal and economic principles, and must contribute to our country's overall job creation and investment targets. And you know that yesterday, in Ward 14 in Soweto, Gauteng, and Ward 20 in Mafike in Northwest, there were by-elections held. The ANC retained both these wards with higher margins than those we had in the local government elections. This outcome reaffirms our people's continued confidence in the ANC. We do not take this result for granted, and we are humbled by the support as we work to recover lost ground and rebuild confidence and support of the ANC amongst all South Africans. And that's why, to this end, the ANC have moved with speed to strengthen the organization's capacity to execute the tasks and demands of the phase of the revolution as directed by the 54th National Conference. And both the 53rd and 54th National Conference has resolved that the heads of organizing, elections, political education, and cadre development in particular are important and should be permanently deployed to Luthuli House. And in line with this resolution, we are happy to announce and inform South Africans that the following comrades will now be full-time at Luthuli. And that's why we have Comrade Senzo Mkunu with us here as the chair of organizing. Comrade Senzo is here on my left. And you also have, next to him, we have Comrade Vota Fikile Mbalula as the head of elections, because we are starting with that campaign. We have already started. And we have Comrade Zizi Kotwa, who's going to be the head in the presidency here at Luthuli. And next to Comrade Zizi Kotwa there, we have Comrade Dakota Lehuete, who's going to work very close with Comrade Senzo. And our general manager, who's going to ensure that the ANC is properly organized and effective and efficient and modernized and professional, is Comrade Phoebe Potgieter. And then we also have Comrade Ndu working at head office to ensure that our coordination of the ANC and the NWC work is granted. So comrades, and the only comrade who is not here, Comrade Pinky Moloi, will also be reinforcing our organizing. We are also strengthening on work in political education and cadre development. And to this end, we will be inviting former presidents of the ANC as well as Comrade President Jacob Zuma and Comrade Thabo Mbeki, as well as the former Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe, to assist us in this area of work. We will be going to the presidents and Comrade Kgalema, engage them and ensure that they are part of the body politics of the ANC in strengthening and consolidating the unity and renewing the ANC. Branches remain the basic and most important unit of the organization, and they are expected to be in constant dynamic contact with our communities at all times, working with them to solve their problems. And in line with conference resolutions, branches are directed to convene community meetings at least once every 2 months. And the implementation of this and our resolutions will be monitored for implementation through the monitoring and evaluation capacity, which will be residing in the presidency since Comrade Zizi Kodwa is there. And next week, the Independent Electoral Commission will open all voting stations for voter registration and for voters to check their addresses against the voters. The ANC calls on all people eligible to vote, especially first-time voters, to come out in their numbers and register. Those who are already registered are asked to check their addresses, as only people with addresses on the voters' roll will vote in the 2019 general elections. I want to conclude by saying, I think we are here to inform the South African society and our structures that we are now ready to consolidate and implement the resolutions of the 54th National Conference. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary General. We are now going to open for questions. The standard is that when you ask questions, you tell us which media outlet you represent and then go ahead with your question. You can start. You will start and then come. Yes, Nicholas. Okay, we can go ahead. Now is this.
Hi, Karine
Yes,
du Plessis. I'm writing for Daily Maverick. I have two questions. First question is the resolutions from NASREC. I haven't seen them on the website yet. When can we have a copy of them, maybe? And the second question is on the former presidents getting involved in cadre mobilization. Have you engaged the former presidents yet, or the Secretary General said they're going to engage, so you haven't sounded them out yet? I'm just curious to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, Bonolo, New Age.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking my question. It's Bonolo from the New Age. I just wanted to ask, can the ANC claim the moral victory for the land debate? Because it took the EFF to inject this discussion into the national discourse for the ANC to perhaps remember that it had this particular policy. And again, it was the EFF that was one step ahead of the ANC by tabling this motion in Parliament. And the ANC was once again reacting to what the EFF had done by amending its motion. So in this regard, can the ANC claim the moral victory for the land debate? Thank you.
Okay, Nicholas.
Good afternoon, Nicholas from ENCA, beg your pardon. Just these appointments to Luthuli House, are they going to be permanent, or is it only in the run-up to elections next year? And could you perhaps extrapolate exactly on what Senzo Mkhunu's role is going to be? There's suggestions that it might be a double-up of what the Secretary General is supposed to be doing, which is interesting based on the fact that they both contested for that position at NASREC. And then perhaps last but not least, having a look at the ANC's finances, we've got to look at them at NASREC. You guys are still paying off debt from when Julius Malema was ANC Youth League president. So I'm wondering how you're going to be able to pay for all these full-time positions. If you could maybe shed any light on that. Thank you.
Yes, Mahlatsi. Uzongena sisi makaqedile.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mahlase from News 24. On the expropriation of land without compensation, there's a lot of panic in terms of then what after it is actually passed and if the constitutional amendment actually does go through. People want to know what are the practical steps of what happens afterwards. There are people who are paying off bonds on their farms. There are people paying off bonds on their houses, on their farms. There's people who still want the land to have title deeds, but we hear of calls for land to be handed over to the state. Has the ANC actually thought of a policy after this constitutional amendment goes through? I'm sure you've seen the articles around how banks might be the worst affected because of all the issues of bonds and all of that. And if there is such a policy, could we have access to it so that people understand how they will actually be affected once it actually goes through? And if you don't have a plan, you know, are you not jumping the gun, helping with this panic as we wait for August to kick in for the final decision from the National Assembly? And then to the SG, we understand that there are ANC members that are protesting in Free State who again are calling for the PTT that you constituted to be disbanded. And the argument is that you've basically put back people that were annulled by the courts and found to have not been elected properly. And the divisiveness that you left behind is basically continuing. And will you actually disband that PTT to allow for a fresh process where branches can start from scratch to meet and elect new delegates to go to fresh elections?
Okay.
Just to suggest something, is it possible that we limit the questions to 4 and then we answer? Because I'm afraid we're going back to that process where there's like 10 questions.
We're now doing our job. You make a speech. After making a speech, you tell us how we must do our work. You must stand in a conference. Okay, can you proceed? Don't worry, Matlats, we've got an open democratic process here.
Hi,
Okay.
My name is
You can
Natasha
go on.
Piri from ANC7. Just yesterday when President Cyril Ramaphosa was addressing traditional leaders, he had said that there should be a time frame for the redressal of land. Has the ANC discussed this time frame? And then secondly, maybe your reaction on the latest land audit surveys. It reveals that the majority of South Africans are landless and land holding has changed significantly in the past 25 years. Just your reaction on that. Thank you.
No, thanks. We'll integrate Matlatsi's suggestion. We'll stop here and then we'll come back to. Okay, this is how we're going to go with the answers. The head of elections will take on the question on land. The head of organizing will deal with the strengthening of Lituli House. And Comrade Zizi will attend to the questions that relate to monitoring and all of that. And the SG will provide an overarching response on organizational issues. We'll start with Comrade Mbax, Comrade Senzo, Comrade Zizi, and the SG. Thanks. Come. No, Comrade Mbax, we answer from here.
I'm from a different environment of arresting people, so I answer anyway. Thank you very much, SG and Comrade Pule. The question of land, as you will know, it's a historical injustice. And it is victory for the people of South Africa. And the question of land audit does demonstrate that we have not tampered with land redistribution fundamentally to the point that the dispossessed can lay their claim to the belief that land has actually been brought back. So radical economic transformation means speeding up, among others, the question of land redistribution. Political parties and their beliefs believe in what they believe in, but cooperation in relation to this particular question, to the like-mindedness on the question of land redistribution, is equally a very important milestone in the politics of South Africa. And in this particular instance, does the ANC have a moral claim to this? Of course. The question of who comes before, it is a tactical question in relation to who claims the victory, but at the end of the day, the ANC have not veered away from this question. We came from conference with a decisive decision on this matter, and we don't prevaricate. Last year, when the motion was tabled, we're not from conference. We're to get a mandate from our structures. We're talking land expropriation without compensation only to the land that is owned by the state. Our conference was decisive in radical economic transformation. So to us, to agree when the EFF tabled the motion last year, if our conference had resolved, we would have voted with them on this particular question, because it's our conference resolution. And that is what is important. So all like-minded political parties who know this historic injustice and so on, and it is the victory to the people of South Africa and the deeds possessed, and we are going to implement this within the context of the constitutional review, within the stipulated period in Parliament. It will come back in 6 months, and then it will be concluded. That is what the people of South Africa want. The land audit just demonstrates the great disparity and the fact that we have not gone a long way in terms of addressing this question. We have been here before. We talked about willing seller, willing buyer. Now we are at the point where we accelerate. And that is what is going to happen. And we are handling this matter mandated by our conference resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade SG and Comrade Pule. We see no stampede or possible stampede in terms of work that we need to do at head office. We see ourselves assembled by the SGO as a team, even in an area of jockeys and horse riding and all those things. There will be an owner of the horse. Someone else will be a jockey. Someone else will feed the horses. And someone else will train. And there's no stampede. So I'm saying we see ourselves as a team. And this is a very, very involved kind of work that we're doing at head office. The ANC is a big organization, and it requires much more specialization than it did some 20, some 50 years ago. You now have to be a modern political organization functioning on all cylinders. And the ANC has seen it wise that it should make sure that it functions up to that level and up to its own expectations, but also being the governing party, up to that level of functioning at the expectation of South Africans. We see no stampede, as you will see as we go on with our work, and it will be highly coordinated. And we appreciate and look forward to your involvement in what we're going to be doing. Thank you very much.
I would imagine you're going to see more of members of the National Executive Committee, whether ministers or former ministers being based at Luthuli House, because the conference, one of the resolutions it took is to limit the deployment of National Executive Committee to government as part of the resolution to capacitate Luthuli House. Because that resolution is a long-held view of the ANC that we need, among others, to build capacity at Luthuli House to drive the agenda and programs of the organization. This time around, as you can see here in front, led by Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, the team of the descendants of the dangerous generation of the Youth League has been assembled at Lutuli House to lead the organization to, among others, the overwhelming victory come 2019. One of the issues that the organization has done is to appoint to the office of the president, the head of the presidency, beyond overarching programs of coordination and functions in the office, introduced an outfit called PME to actually evaluate and monitor the efficacy of our policies. To what an extent our policies meet the objective. That is not an office work. It means you must be on the ground. It's not a technical work where you just sit down and get a report from institute about what difference your policies are making. You've got to be on the ground to make sure that you are able to make an observation and evaluation of the efficacy of your policies. That is what which, as a collective led by Zizi Kodwa, will have to do. Among others, it will include, Matlatsi, an evaluation and monitoring of the work that is done by deployees themselves, that do not sit on the job and sleep on the job, but they perform what is expected of them, from a councillor to the minister. When you take oath of office and affirmation, you must live with it and internalize it, so that you must deal with what I think the organization seeks to achieve. So what you see here, it may just be the start of what we're yet to see, a bigger team based in Lutuli House to make sure that we drive the organization's program. Thank you.
No, I'm just going to ask the Deputy Secretary General to step in to just address the principle of full-timeness, Nicholas. So you know people are going to be getting their salaries.
The role of? Oh, let me start there. I think that's an interesting question because it feeds into a narrative that we've come together here as contestants. We're not. We're a team. And first and foremost, the mandate we've been given is to build a stronger ANC, and also to make sure that the ANC is modernized, and thirdly, to ensure that we have a very decisive victory of the 2019 election. So there's no competitor here. This is a team. And we will each have our own work to do. And since 1990, we've always had a full-time organizer. If you recall Steve Chwete, those of you who are old enough, might recall that we did have an NEC member, Steve Chwete, Comrade Steve Chwete the late, who was the national organizer of the ANC. That worked very well for us, where there was somebody who worked closely with the Secretary General, who was enabled to go around to the structures and make sure that they're functioning properly, but indeed that they have a program on the ground. So it's not just a structure for the sake of having structures, it's actually structures that are committed to expanding the influence of the ANC. That's what it's about. Also, all of us are full-time, but we don't come to the ANC because of the salaries the ANC will pay us. I don't want to comment on that, except to say that irrespective of what that salary may or may not be, we're here to stay. And if it happens, we'll feel very glad. If it's a good salary, we'll be happy. And if it's not, we're still here to stay. And that's our commitment. I also want to say, Matlatsi, on the issue of the policy perspective on land, firstly, we asked government to do a land audit, step one. That land audit revealed that land, in fact, had shifted in a different direction than what we thought. So, for instance, although 72% of the land is in the hands of private hands and still a minority of South Africans, the 13% we used to talk of in 104 years ago has shifted a little bit. Not that African people in the main have had access to land. Other South Africans have had more access to land. So you need to look at that land audit and understand that we can't walk away from our resolution. And secondly, that the panic is in fact being stimulated by some people, including our good friends, who are going overseas to talk about South Africa being another Zimbabwe. That is absolute nonsense. What is going to happen is that there is a land use plan in the making. And the question of land redistribution can never not be an ANC decision only. It's got to be a national decision. And every South African who understands that the future does lay in growing our economy and undermining poverty will work with us on this question and not start unintended panics that have unrelated to the reality of the big question. Does the majority of the people in this country have access to land so that they can use land? We're also very clear that our land use policy is not going to undermine the economy or food production. So I think people need to read into that exactly what it says and not try to read into another definition, which is a slide away from it to, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my house. I doubt if that is true, and I doubt if that kind of panic is very useful.
Well, on the organizational issues, I think whether you talk PTTs, I think now that the ANC has adopted subcommittees, we have now deployments to provinces. Our NEC members are now in their provinces. They've been dispersed, and they will be dealing with all issues and matters affecting the organization, whether it's PTT in the Free State, in KZN. We are ready, and I think between now and May, there will be regional conferences and provincial conferences in Gauteng, in KZN, in the Free State, and all other regions which are supposed to go to conferences. We will be meeting chairs of subcommittees next week, so I think our machinery is well oiled. We will always internally want to discuss internal ANC matters within the ANC, so we will deal with whatever challenges we have, and I think we are ready because this is the year of unity and renewal.
Thanks, Secretary General. We are now going to take the last.
Let me just also indicate that when you see Comrade Phoebe here, you should be knowing that he was part of the SABC board, so he has resigned. She has resigned.
Thanks for that clarity, SG. So we are taking the last round of questions. No, Matlatsi, you came first. We'll take two more. Tidine. News 24 anyway, so you can. And then, no, you had your bite. Your answer was about getting resolutions on the website. We're working on that. It will happen. It will be there next Monday. The president's being informed about. Okay.
No, they are just waiting for us to tell them what to do.
Okay. Yourself, Ma'am, Aldrin, Puti, and yourself. Okay. Then from here we close. Okay, colleagues, just introduce your name so that next time we can also just call you by name in that way. Okay.
Okay, Sito Maston, City Press. Just two questions. First one's to the SG. We saw something very unusual last week during the cabinet reshuffle where the SG walked in with the president and walked out with the president. I don't know, I haven't followed the ANC long enough, but I've never seen former SG Gwede Mantashe walking in and out with President Jacob Zuma. I've never seen Kgalema Motlanthe do the same. I was just wondering, maybe if you could assist us why it has never happened before, or perhaps there was a message behind, that walk in and walk out together that we missed. And then to the head of elections, Mogalavi. I was in Alexander last week. There was an event where the president was supposed to come and address an RET dialogue of some sort. And the people there were still concerned that, but the ANC hasn't told us why they had to recall President Jacob Zuma. I anticipated that in your election campaign, you are going to come across that question. So perhaps, to help all of us, if you could just give us a sense of what kind of answer and response are you going to give to the electorate out there when these questions come up. Thanks.
Thank you. CD Madia from News 24. I just want to start off with the question about the provincial task teams. Matlati did raise that there are protests in the Free State saying that they're not happy. So our question was, will that PTT be disbanded? And then we're hoping to get reaction from the ANC about the Ngwenyama Trust and even the King's reaction to that and asking for R5 donations. And then my last question is, the Youth League seems very aggrieved about the cabinet reshuffle. I don't know what the ANC's reaction has been. It says it feels that its issues do not matter to its mother body. So I was hoping to get reaction to that as well. Thank you.
I guess I'll just steal it from here before it heads over to the other side. Arabile Kumete from Bloomberg News. Just because of the commonalities now regarding land with the EFF, what is the potential that the ANC is willing to work with the EFF in order to regain some of the metros that had lost in the local municipality elections as well, and that have discussions in that regard as well begun? And at the same time, with that being the case, would there be potential for EFF members to have a seat in your government of sorts?
I'm actually just going to take my question. Genevieve Quintal from Business Day. I've been covered on some of them, but on the issue of I don't know if I missed something, on the monitoring and evaluation in the Office of the President, who's the team made up of? Is it NEC members? I know Zizi said he'll be leading the team, or did you mean this is the team? You said us as a collective, so just a little more on that. And then also the monitoring and evaluation, there was a bit of confusion. Well, there were different takes at conference about the Integrity Committee. I think that the Integrity Committee would work with the Evaluation and Monitoring Committee in some way. Because obviously if you're looking at deployees and what's happening, will there be a link between the two? And has it been decided yet about the Integrity Committee if it has more teeth? There seems to be a bit of back and forth on that.
Aldrin St-Pierre from SABC TV News. On the issue of planning and monitoring and evaluation, under President Jacob Zuma, the ministers used to sign performance agreements. This time around with President Cyril Ramaphosa, they're signing performance agreements as well. And will those performance agreements ever be made public? There was a question or concern that was raised in the discussion documents last year, where certain ANC deployees are sent to certain departments, but they do not implement the resolutions of the party. Zizi, will you also be focusing on that and making sure that resolutions taken at a party level is also implemented when it gets to a government level, considering this whole debate right now with the issue around digital migration? The second issue is the youth. Just taking off what CD mentioned now, the issue around the youth representation. You have subcommittees of the ANC who have now been appointed, and none of them are young. None of them are from the ANC Youth League. Is this another way of the ANC saying that it has no confidence whatsoever in the current caliber of cadres that it has deployed inside the ANC Youth League?
Thank you. It's Sasanda Gwabe from Black Excellence Network. I have a couple of questions here that I jotted down that I need to. Thank you. Okay. One, I was listening to one of the EFF guys talking on radio a couple of days ago. They were saying that they are not talking about just waking up in the morning and go take somebody's land. They have a specific plan on how are they going to take that land and hand it over to the people, because they are going to take it by fire and force, quote. So I want to know, are you as the ANC going to work with the strategy of the EFF, because they started the plan. So are you going to follow them in their plan, or are you going to strut your own route on how to take the land from the people? And then while we're still on that, I'm actually coming from Gwamhlabiyalingana in the northern KwaZulu-Natal. Mbax has been there a couple of days ago. I want to find out, there's this Isimangaliso Wetland Park, which owns a big chunk of land. We are busy talking about the land that is being owned by the whites. What about the land that is being owned by the kings and some of the land that is belonging to the government that you guys are not doing anything about it? We have our own people that are sitting there suffering. They're not allowed to fish, they're not allowed to take wood, they're not allowed to do anything. That land belongs to the government that is suppressing the people. But yet we're making a lot of noise about the other land that is owned by the white people. So what are we doing with the land that we have here as the black people? Thank you.
Sipamakanda from the Sunday Times. Mine is to the SG. SG, I just wanted to a clarification on the appeals panel that was led by Utadus Bundebele. Can you please tell us the terms of reference of that appeals panel? Also, just elaborate on when is his report, or is his report, has it been given to you as the leaders of the ANC, and when will it be made public? And also, just last one on the allegations that the report is suggesting that the Eastern Cape PEC must be dissolved.
Okay, we are done with the questions. Comrade Dakota Lehuete will deal with working with the opposition. Zizi will take a last bite on M&E, and the SG will give an overriding organizational response on all the other questions we have asked. Two more, you will notice that the question that you are asking has already been answered long time ago on the electioneering part and the reasons and all of that. We have dealt with that question extensively. Comrade Dakota.
Thank you very much, Comrade Pule. On our working relations with the opposition, as part of our responsibility as a governing party, in line with the Constitution of the Republic, it's in our interest to work with the opposition to find a better South Africa and a better service delivery. But as the ANC, on our own, that's why late last year, we presented a document on gaining the lost ground. We have agreed as the ANC that what is going to be priority is unity and renewal within our ranks so that we can be better ANC that can work and reconnect with our people. That's what we'll be working much on. And part of the work as part of renewing our movement is to ensure that we regain the lost ground, we bring the ANC to its former glory, and reconnect with our people. So we are going to humble ourselves before our people. We agree that there may be a ground that we have lost, but we are working towards regaining it. And that is what we will focus much more on than looking at probably coalitions and other things. But we will focus on ensuring that we humble ourselves back to our people so that we can bring the ANC to its former glory. Thank you.
Whilst we have all right to evaluate the efficacy of our policies in Simpiwe, we are in a multi-party democracy, we must listen to other parties as well in terms of the effectiveness of our policies. So we'll continue to do that in terms of monitoring the resolutions of our conference in relation to what I called earlier, their set objective. Jenny, when I talk about capacity, I mean, monitoring and evaluation may require certain technical skills. People who do a research base, for an example. And I'm talking about experience, skills, and that if it rests with an NEC member, if there's an NEC member with that skill, no problem with that. But of course, part of that office, it has got to have a capacity to do that work. But the point I was emphasizing, it's not office-based. It's not just technically. At the end of the day, you must do a PowerPoint in the meeting. You've got to visit an office of somebody to see if somebody is doing his or her job. We will do 360 evaluation before election of all MPs and MPLs of the ANC before election, so that we don't fumble when we go to people towards election about who has done what, who has not done what.
Okay, DSG.
Let me just say that the Sibundebele Commission of Inquiry has finalized its work. The report has been presented to the Secretary General. We will take that report through the processes that work for the ANC. Firstly, we will discuss the report as the officials. It will go to the National Working Committee. Thereafter, the recommendations of the report will be discussed with the leadership of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, which is what we normally do. And after that, we will discuss how we implement those recommendations. We're not able to discuss those recommendations with the media until we have actually discussed them thoroughly within our own structures. The terms of reference of the Sibundebele Commission was to examine if the Conference of the Eastern Cape had been run according to the guidelines of the ANC and whether the outcome was free and fair. Those were the two questions they were expected to answer. So at this point, that is all we're able to say, despite the fact that we understand that some of you, the Daily Dispatch, our branch number 3, claims to have the report. We would doubt that very much. If the report they have is authentic. There's only one copy of the report, and that copy was handed to the Secretary General.
Yeah. No, I think the panel has responded to the questions. The issues of Ngonyama Trust, I think there isn't any decision on that. So there will be engagements, and we do respect kings, we do respect traditional leaders, we work with them on a daily basis, and we'll respect even working with society. And in terms of the cabinet reshuffle, no, it has been happening. When President Zuma or any president, the ANC is always there, because the president does actually consult the organization. And indeed, we were consulted, a thorough consultation took place, and we met together with the president, those who will be ministers, to ensure that they know that the ANC is the center of power. And lastly, I think if you talk about the Youth League, in the NEC, we do deploy people who are elected NEC members. Comrade Mbalola comes from the Youth League, Comrade Dakota, Comrade Zizi, there are so many, Comrade Colin is a convener of a province. In cabinet there are many young people. No, you talk about the ANC Youth League. Even the ANC Youth League does actually say, these are our own. And they are happy. So Gigawa is there, Kuba is there, Manamela is there, because so I think there was thorough consultation, and we are happy as an organization that we are moving forward. We are renewing the African National Congress, and that's what you are going to see. Yeah.
Okay, Nicholas, we'll have to do it outside. We're now closing the briefing, but also just wish Kusela well. She's going to leave the communications unit here at Lituli House. She will be at home for the better part. So yeah, we must wish her well. I'm sure you enjoyed working with her while she was here in the unit. She will still be available to come and assist us to take our work forward. Thanks very much for coming. Do come again. Yeah, you can give Kusela a round of applause. I mean, yes. Yes.
Okay, that briefing at Luthuli House wrapping up there. We've been listening to the Secretary General Ace Magashule starting off by applauding Parliament for supporting the EFF motion on expropriation of land without compensation. That was the big issue at this briefing, with Ace Magashule saying that the accelerated land reform program must be done in an orderly manner, he said. And then the other issue which was discussed was the permanent deployments at Luthuli House. Senzo Mqunu is heading up organisation. Fikile Mbalula will head up the elections, and Zizi Kodwa will head the presidency at Luthuli House. So just some of what came out of that briefing. But our Aldrin Sampier is there. He'll have more for us on that. In the meantime, it's emerged that the embattled former Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown has resigned as a Member of Parliament. The ANC Chief Whip's office has just issued a statement saying Brown's resignation was effective from Tuesday. President Ramaphosa's cabinet reshuffle was on Monday night. Brown joined the National Assembly in 2014, serving in the Western Cape Legislature in various capacities from 1994 until 2014. The Public Protector found that Brown had inadvertently misled Parliament on the Eskom Trillion deal. Brown was one of the witnesses at the parliamentary inquiry into Eskom. Her own party, the ANC, also accused her of perjury. And yet another Eskom executive has resigned. Sean Moritz, the suspended group executive for information technology at the power utility, was facing charges of misconduct. His disciplinary hearing was due to take place next week. Eskom says the disciplinary process to hold Moritz to account for any proven wrongdoing can no longer be pursued in light of his resignation. But the power utility says it could still institute legal action against Moritz for any damages suffered by the company due to his actions. So Cabinet is considering expanding the list of basic foodstuffs exempt from value-added tax. This follows the VAT increase from 14% to 15%, as announced by the former Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba last Wednesday. New Communications Minister Nomvula Mokonyane briefed the media in Parliament about the outcomes